Tier lists are common practice amongst the general populace.
Let's talk about cocaine. It makes my wiener stop working.
Yours truly included. A meta that I, for one, am sick of.
Meta this, meta that. Have you ever met a fucking girl before?
In a subversion of expectations, this tier list will combine all multiple leaders of a single civ into a singular entity. The implications of this discovery are far-reaching, dwindling the numbers of eligible candidates as no bachelors are included, meaning the regular rectum ravagers are not present in this radical interpretation of the tier list.
Except you stay.
This ranking is based on the pooled strength of every leader in a civ, so if you have, say, Hammurabi and a scout-based civilization with minus 20 combat strength to non-scout units as their only ability, you'll only reach B tier, despite Babylon's tendencies of carpet bombing primitive civilizations at turn 7. This is based on an average Pangea/continents game, so I don't want to hear, actually, if you finish your Taco Bell anal enema at exactly 11:11 p.m. before bicep curling for 43 minutes, then this civ is actually S tier. Bottoming out as the royal flush of festering shits is Team Avatar if they possessed even-numbered chromosomes. I'd feel more excitement at the prospect of a penectomy than having to play this conglomeration of dreadful defects, rather opting to have Marty McFly capturing my 11-year-old self, before subsequently dropping me off the battle bus into a studio apartment with my only company consisting of Minecraft YouTubers and EDP for 3 hours, before having to play 2 out of the 4 being Eleanor and OG Victoria. Elizabeth isn't much better, possessing such abilities as 3 gold per district and 2 free trade routes. Well, at least I'll be able to afford both the therapy and neuralizer needed after embarking on a mega campaign with these 4 leaders. Not that you'd be able to complete that arduous task, as a few days after, the police would find your brains splattered against your wall. Sherlock's latest bang is a substantial improvement, however, even that is not enough to make up for the Powerpuff Girls if the professor spilled a beaker of Habsburg genome into his concoction, leaving them more outmatched than the 2018 NBA Finals, where LeBron had to carry a bunch of Make-A-Wish kids against the Monstars. I almost made to put this dynamic duo as last, however, the revelation that Mansa can eventually earn enough to even bribe cops into ignoring his ethnicity was reasonable enough doubt. That impressive skill set saves the Molly team from the dredges of dead last when you consider that, unlike the Batman villain England has, Mansa isn't required to carry a truckload of special ed kids. He only needs to carry 1. You may be forgiven for thinking the man who can purchase books is a grand choice, as they even provide production. 2, in fact. Well, tug on my meat stick and call it a balloon animal. Consider these trousers ruined.
From Geek TV, and today we're talking to local comic fans and finding out what they're purchasing. So what's in the bag?
It's called Brother Sister.
That's awesome. And what is that about? Like a brother-sister crime-fighting duo?
It's about a brother and a sister that fuck.
This is all, of course, before realizing you failed to consider Uncle Sam has had enough of getting my bank account to tweet out #MeToo and started coming after symbiotas. And the production debuff isn't even separated by tax brackets. 5 kids off a Ronald McDonald's bouncer salary? Is that seditious talk I hear? All of this to say, while they may not secure the honor of dead last, anyone that does resolve to go up against Shaq and Kobe from the clearance aisle is still in danger of getting RICO'd. The next selection isn't nearly as top-heavy as the previous 2 installments, if they can be called that. It's JoJo's Part 3 all over again if the main characters were engaged in a mid-off in Central Cairo. While neither Cleo is so generationally abhorrent that I'd hire a hitman to kill my family and hide my antidepressants, they're at best C tier. Ramses, meanwhile, when he isn't making attempts to gaslight 16-year-olds, is busy obtaining a smidgen of culture, just a drop, 15%. Don't be too generous. Wouldn't want to completely break the game by allowing fascism in the classical era now, would we? None of which can be classified as bad or even below average. However, in this cutthroat competition, Egypt is going to get used harder than a naive 18-year-old white Instagram girl in a Saudi fetish dungeon by most other entrants. Our next entry has an impressive total of 5 leaders. 2 of which can actually lead. You see, basing an entire civilization around one leader's ability probably wasn't the most optimal decision. 50% of a Eureka instead of 40? Well, fuck my titties and make me moo in pleasure, that's value savings right there. In fact, I'd be losing money if I didn't take them up on that offer. The Crouching Tiger is by far the leading cause of unique unit-induced suicides, as at least Scythia's horse archers can drive by Cyrus's block before he can formulate a proper response. The only positive I can conjure up is that the name matches its resume.
What position is this? The Crouching Tiger.
The Great Wall proves adequate for culture, but the truly impressive thing here is Eureka's for Wonders, something only Chin-Chi Huang can take advantage of unless you want to play the new VR Walking Dead game with clubs and rocks as your weapons of choice. Against the 4 Horsemen of Beijing sounds European enough to me. The others are just taken advantage of. Chuko News were replaced with Chris Hansen's take on the art of war, providing a single turn of a city's yields if your spy is successful. The LARPer will bring back the Warring Kingdoms period by shattering China again if his fat ass takes command. Kublai Khan's mother should have swallowed, being as effective as Joseph Stalin was conservative. Yongle and his leader ability are the only thing keeping these cataclysmic quintuplets from emigrating to 1930s Germany, proudly displaying a 6-point star on their chests for a quality of life improvement. Speaking of Kublai Sans Khan, ever since Genghis himself rolled out of the grave and snatched that title back, the only thing propping up Mongolia is their civ abilities and Genghis's force multiplier after catching some horses lacking. Adding in Genghis's impressive tactical genius on full display by orchestrating an extraction and distribution of the target's nudes, proving effective propaganda. Increasing his troops' fervor by a considerable amount, the combination of this and the Keshig save Mongolia from the bottom despite Kublai's best efforts at self-defenestration. India represents the Fresh Prince if Will Smith's senile granddad whose dating preferences matched the minute section of a clock was sent to Bel Air instead of him. I touched one little girl.
My mom got scared and said you're moving with your auntie and uncle in Bel Air.
Now there is a caveat. If we include nuclear weapons, Gandhi carries India to the top placement, I think we can all agree. While the faith ability might help you obtain religious settlements, the others require too extensive micromanagement for too little a reward. As for Chandragupta, that's more like it. Buddy and his elephants take Dharma, Stepwells, and shoves it right up your ass until you give up your entire empire, only to repeat the process 10 turns later, rectifying their atrocity that is Gandhi. But not a complete amendment, as the biggest injustice here is the character model. If I was Indian, I would have completely banned this game, with perpetrators being punished by 5 years hard labor of playing nothing but Kublai Khans, despite the American who concocted this atrocity. Civ 5 Gandhi is a much more endearing depiction, unlike this. What the hell was Firaxis expecting us to say when they took the 90-year-old crack addict who lives on the corner of my street as inspiration? Oh my god, here he comes. Look at how his chest caves in, my goodness. Average TCLR subscriber behavior. I'd personally give him 3 free punches before fighting back. Now let's bring in an average TCLR subscriber for comparison. After getting bullied constantly, these little bugs immediately subscribe to the TheCivLifeR and we get to see exclusive footage. They grow 250 pounds of pure muscle, immediately grow 30 feet taller, one roar and the Twin Towers have collapsed again, and they unlock their true TheCivLifeR subscriber selves. Bear witness to the power, one fastball on the continental plates shift, and Australia's attached to India again. Leave a like and subscribe to immediately reach the pinnacle of human evolution, and 2, more importantly, not miss out on future content. Catherine and her alter ego off a lethal dosage of acid are exemplary enough in their own right, piling on Eleanor and her abilities being more effectively utilized with France as opposed to the result of intergenerational inbreeding they got going on with England, and the French catch a dub for the first time since 1918. Except this time they didn't have to take Uncle Sam's golden shower to do it. The cornucopia of cultural development, also known as the Court Festival, really steals the show, more so than Eleanor's abilities, which take a while to complete. Trade for luxury duplicates and then hold some festivals in accordance with French tradition. Let's hear an example.
Thousands of people taking to the streets after French President Emmanuel Macron raises the retirement age from 62 to 64 years old.
Peaceful, really. Who wants Suleiman? Now who wants Suleiman without Janissaries or Ibrahim?
What the fuck did they do? Who the fuck is this?
Magnificent is an interesting leader if you're not paying any attention to the game or looking at the screen whatsoever. They implemented the difficulty scale South Park pioneered and removed all the benefits Suleiman had after throwing him in a tanning booth, cause why they thought removing Janissaries and Ibrahim was a good idea is beyond me. Somebody's credit score definitely went down for that. Both Greeks are specialists in their fields and are relatively on equal footing until one of them reads Mein Kampf and thinks, damn, he's spitting. The 5% bonus to culture is a lead if you can secure 5 or more city-states, but the easily accessed potential found with Gorgo is really what puts Greece in the middle of the pack here. Hoplites can be effective early on if matched up against an opponent suffering from the consequences of insulting Mike Tyson's stutter, and the Acropolis provides the envoys needed to have city-states look at you with awe and wonder, although they did do that to me last video as Julius Caesar, of course, but Pericles won't require the hollow tips for that. Despite Nader wasting his military budget on drip, that works in his favor, as even with such an underwhelming leader ability, the satrapies are most effective at sanctions avoidance after you get desperate enough to send your immortals to Ukraine. One of the strongest unique units in the entire game, you'd have an easier time backing out of Cracker Barrel with your limbs intact after calling Ronald Reagan a pussy than you would against these archer swordsmen. Factor in Cyrus being unmatched at playing peekaboo before hiding half your empire and proceeding to do it again in 10 turns is enough to put them in the top half of this list. This is the first civ where there's relative parity between the two, with Hojo and Tokugawa both possessing enough destructive capabilities to tourism so as to necessitate the opposition to pop into Walgreens for some hemorrhoid cream. I've personally never partaken in a threesome, but I would imagine it to be something akin to America, where you have 2 superstars performing, and then the dude who finishes first and sits there watching the others go at it. Perhaps put on a pot of tea when it gets too uncomfortable.
Well, you can consider us friends.
Rough Rider isn't bad by any means, but is at best mid, and if we did this tier list a year ago, America would be engaging firmly in the Battle of Mid. But with Bull Moose Teddy using what I presume to be flower power, saving the trees and your science victory while he's at it, plus Abraham Lincoln treating other civs like he did the Confederates, we can safely defend their placement this far up the list. I'm assuming the word Nzinga means goat in Congolese, else their names are just pure coincidence. Selecting boy after Professor Oak asks you the age-old question prior to taking your mother to the region's local breeding house is definitely getting the short end of the stick. For the gargantuan price of disabling a victory type and the crack-like withdrawals all game considering Mvemba would suck you off behind a 7-Eleven for the chance to look at your religion, you would think you would get fair recompense. But the reality is you get an apostle every time you finish theater squares or banzas, which... yeah, I'd like 1 wig, please. Lady Thick Thighs doesn't seem so thick anymore since Nzinga takes her ability and upgrades. Being on the same continent as the capital is a much easier task than within 6 tiles. Wielding the power of the 4 Arab S's of Sand, Slavery, Sharia, and Saladin, Arabia is one where the civ abilities alone would have them firmly placed in the top 10. After staking outside Mvemba's house and snagging any profit which passes by, Arabia is always able to found a religion no matter what. Gonna send Wario and the Gingerbread Man into a tantrum when they discover all the great profits completely sold out of the area. And while I've never seen this camel before, must be a new breed, it proves itself effective in medieval era combat nonetheless. Alongside the 10% boost to yields and coupons saved up to build religious buildings for dirt cheap, combined to make Vizier one of the elite civs in the game. And then you add in Big Dick Saladin, who wears the armor much better than other wannabe warlords, doubling the flanking bonuses, which is unheard of. Any peace agreement will require you to zip up his pants when he's done as the starting point for any negotiations, with 4 combat strength instead of 2 means you could even have Lana Rhodes on the casting couch and you'd still come out on top. Korea alone is enough to put him in the top 4, but factoring in that both Sejong and Seondiak have abilities that would necessitate possession of a spare change of underwear, you see why they're deserving of the top 4 placements. Sejong's leader ability is definitely the weaker of the two, as no doubt later on you can post a video on oddly satisfying watching all 10 civics you get pop up on screen, but early game, well, 40 culture isn't exactly a game-changing amount. Korea's is a much more practical, as 3% per promotion means 5 to 6 cities is usually enough to launch telescopes, while Unga is still learning what fire does to a motherfucker. I'm not gonna lie, before the last update, Rome would have been no better than absolute mid. Trajan is an Aurelian and would be inadequate for the task of having to do the heavy lifting required for Caesar and his 200 gold per encampment. A paltry sum that would barely be enough to purchase Trajan his refreshments while he's doing both their jobs. But now with the both of them on fairly equal footing, and well, perhaps Trajan isn't the top dog anymore after my last video, they are more than deserving of a top 3 placement. When I first saw Ludwig, I thought he would be some sort of domination-centered leader since A, I don't think Firaxis would make the obvious choice for a domination-centered German leader, and B, he appears to have just retired from a war council where, in his anger at the evident lack of brain function amongst his commanders, he traced the fortifications he needed constructed on his chin. His leader ability, however, is muy bien, no doubt enough to win a culture victory pre-medieval era, something not seen since Wario was caught stealing every instrument before anybody else could figure out what an instrument was. And Frederick, while his city-state ability has a reminiscent aura found in abundance at the local dog park, wields the other German abilities that are some of the best in the entire game. You add in a frontman like Ludwig, and all Frederick has to do is make sure his top dog is hydrated with Julius. There should be no doubt about which duo takes gold, unless Nebuchadnezzar is released in a new leader update and is at least D tier. Basil is already the second strongest leader in the entire game. His persistent dominance is nothing short of a war crime. I'd sooner let EDP 445 teach at a preschool unsupervised than I would let the DILF near horses unsupervised. At least one isn't a direct cause of the fall of civilizations. This alone is a top 3 ability, even if Theodora decided to continue stripping on the side to afford the refreshments needed for Basil to carry unperturbed. However, in a shock to many, this relationship is more of a... There really isn't any argument that they aren't the strongest duo, with both the strongest and probably top 10 strongest leader in this ranking. In fact, I implore anyone else to make an argument in the comments arguing otherwise. I will respond. Probably.